Hello and welcome everyone to the inaugural Okayplayer House presented by BET. I'm truly honored to be leading this conversation, a very timely and important one, to really delve into the real position of Black culture in the world today and what it means for our communities. I'm joined by a wonderful panel of speakers here to share their unique perspectives. And again, I want to say I'm truly grateful to BET for partnering with us for this entire event and this conversation in particular.
My pleasure.
And with that said, let me introduce Kim Page, who is EVP and CMO of BET, and I'm so thrilled to be on this panel with you.
Happy to be here, happy to be here.
And you're going to show us a little bit of BET's work before we get this going?
Sure, absolutely. First, thank you. It is an absolute honor and pleasure, and this was, I think when the assets went up about this panel, like the chatter around the amazing people here today, so I'm honored to be here with each of you, just amazing stories. And so at BET, obviously what Bob Johnson started, 45, next year will be the 45th anniversary, but what he started to me was a true testament of why we're here today, and that was really creating a space and agency for us to be seen, to be celebrated, all the things, right? If you remember, I just went back again to MJ the musical, and there was a moment in there in the show where he references that another network would not play his videos, right? And so the power of us when we create things for us was really, I think, just a testament to his vision. But more importantly, he knew the business of the business, right? And so while he would like to get credit for doing something that was socially responsible, he said, I did it to make money. And I think that is really core to a lot of the conversations that we're going to talk about today. So with that, I want to just acknowledge the amazing BET team here today who, I tell you guys, we work really hard for you all. We love Black people. I love me, so I love us. But we get to do what we do every day. And so I think we're just going to show a little bit of a quick reel around just some of the things that we've done over the last year or so.
You ready? We are the place where Black culture is celebrated.
We're the ones creating the trends, the fashion, music, everything.
Where we empower, entertain, and inform.
Attacking the issues head on.
Where sisters become queens.
By any means necessary.
And brothers convene.
That's just dope to see us all come together.
We are the place where families unite. Where our voices matter.
I was trying to level the playing field.
And higher education is key.
That's how you change the game. That's how you shake the culture.
We are the place where our stories are told.
I hope this could mean peace and understanding.
And our history cannot be erased.
Our voices must be heard.
Where Black love endures.
I'm so in love with you.
Black joy inspires.
I see me.
We are the place where there's more than one way to be Black.
We set the trends the rest of the world follows.
We about to level up.
That's something for the world. Let's get it.
BET, where Black culture lives. You ready?
And as I said, let's get it. A look at BET's offerings there and their unique position in the culture. There's a lot to dig into. So I want to make some quick introductions so we can start the conversation. Again, Kim Page is a leading industry trailblazer in marketing and has had an illustrious career, currently EVP and CMO at BET. Jimmy Akimbola, who's sitting next to her, is currently blowing audiences away as Jeffrey the Butler in Peacock's reimagining of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He is a force on and off the screen, as you shall soon discover if you don't already know. Victoria Jordan is General Manager of Branded Content and Culture at MyCode. She built an impressive track record as Creative Director on the branded content and agency teams at Complex. Please make them feel welcome with a round of applause. And last but not least, a good friend, TJ Adeshola. We have to put a little stress on that, bring a little Nigerian vibe to that. He is an internationally recognized media executive at the intersection of tech, media, and culture. He currently serves as the operating partner for sports at the private investment firm Octus Partners. Welcome to you all. All right, Kim, let me start with you. There's absolutely no doubt that black culture is the culture, particularly here in the United States, and its impact globally cannot be overstated. But I think right out the gate, we need to set the stage and get some perspective here, because there is a difference between influence and power. So let's talk about that. How do you see it? What is the true standing?
Absolutely. So I think about influence, and I often talk to the team around, and I've had the honor of working on many, many brands in the beverage industry and the beauty industry. And we know the power of who we are, and we know the culture. And I often say, you know, a lot of people want our rhythm, they don't want our blues. But what we do know is that we do set the trends, as you heard from Billy Porter in the video. And so I talked about it around this notion of a different type of ROI, and that is a return on influence. And it's hard to measure that, right? There's no marketing investment that you can make, but when we get behind something, whether it's a product or service, et cetera, the trajectory that we can put behind a business. And for us to understand that and the power of our decision making when it comes to influence, I think is really great, and we should understand it and know it. The difference between influence and value, right, is a massive difference. So influence is obviously how you motivate, inspire people to do something, believe something, to act on something. Ultimately, you want them to buy something. That's influence. Owning the value is when you actually have possession of, dominion over. That's a really big difference, right? Because that means you have, you know, an asset that you decide how you want to use that asset. You get to benefit directly from that asset, and there's a big gap. And so I think the big opportunity for us is to, one, understand the power of, you know, I talk a lot about this, the power of this collision of culture and commerce. And that is who we are. And I think that's why a number of businesses and companies, both, nationally, globally, et cetera, understand us. But I think we just have to have a different conversation at the table. We don't want to be spokespeople anymore, and we want to really have a seat at the table in terms of equity, position, et cetera. And so it is a unique difference. But I'm excited because I think there are a couple of people who really understand that and have been able to really show and determine their outcomes, because that to me is the difference. You don't own the product as an influencer, you know. So I think that's where we should really be focused.
I think that's super interesting, and I want to bring Jimmy in as you talk about the seat at the table and being able to influence outcomes as an actor, right? So from where you sit, an actor, Nigerian heritage, who has worked a lot in the UK, but is global now, really. Your life is global. You're on a plane, you're on both sides of the Atlantic. But let's center the UK for this moment. What is the positioning of black culture there? And do you feel like you have power at the table, despite, or given the rise in black culture globally?
It's a great question. The short answer is no. I think we have a long way to go in the UK. Even watching this video with BET, we need our equivalent. I know we've got BET UK, but we need that equivalent in the UK to tell our stories in our way and have our people that look like us in the positions of power. And otherwise, there's always like you come with the begging bowl, you know? And then when you don't own the place that we are going to, that really affects the outcome of what we can do and how we tell our stories. And yeah, I do think it is slowly changing. I definitely felt like me moving to the States, it was about being an artist on an international, global level and thinking like that, even from a diaspora aspect, you know, in terms of I'm British-born Nigerian. I want to tell stories in the UK, US, in the continent, and they all will be relatable from around the globe. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I think when you look at some of the great, if I focus on like acting and storytelling, if I look at some of the people, some of the work like Cynthia Reeves doing with her production company, you know, that's great. You know, I look at Mr. McQueen, I look at Michael B. Jordan, like there is a shift, and I think it's like a slow dial. And I always like to, when I'm in these positions and these conversations, I'm like, what does it look like when we come together more, like this? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? When you've got people that do have their own companies, they do have power, what does it look like when we come together more to build that thing that is lacking? And I think that's something I would love to talk about right now.
Yeah. Vicky, to bring you in here at this point in the conversation, you know, Jimmy and Kim have talked about power and seat at the table. Again, you can't overstate that Black culture is the culture, and again, everyone's talking about it around the world, but again, to dig a little deeper, is that elevation in Black culture being accompanied by an expansion of the space in terms of the ways we can express ourselves, the mediums in which we can express ourselves? Or, as we're talking about this impact of Black culture, are we still expected to tell one story, to occupy one particular space?
It is a slow burn, but it is expanding. I think the joy of what I do is finding those stories and adding to the tapestry. Like, breaking that monolith, chipping away. We say it all the time, it's not a monolith, but there's still so many stories to be told. So I think the people who have come before, who are breaking these boundaries of how Black folks are seen across the globe, have done a lot of work to get us here, and we just need to continue to push that. And that in turn affects change outside of entertainment and art. Like, after the election, I was talking to a friend of mine about Obama, and I was like, you know, I remember crying that night and being like, oh my God, I didn't think this was gonna happen in my lifetime. But we saw a Black president on 24, starting in 2001, and I feel like those things have to be visible for us to imagine the possibility of it. And I think that's the work that we're all doing by the storytelling and pushing through this one story.
TJ, you were once the most senior Black executive at what was then Twitter, which is today something else. Something else. In your view, what part does tech play in the furthering of the influence of Black culture? Because you sit at the intersection of everything.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned tech specifically, because I feel like when you drill down within tech and speak about social and digital specifically, it's been the catalyst to supercharge this affinity of global Black culture. Specifically on social and digital, we invented the DM slide, we invented the hashtags, we invented this global discussion, this global community by leveraging these platforms in ways that no other culture on the planet leverages these platforms. We chatted about this last week. A week and a half ago, the WizKid album dropped and Kendrick dropped in the same day. I had friends in Lagos and Accra and London sending me memes in real time. That has never been the case where we've consumed culture together collectively across the globe in real time. Kim mentioned this bit about ownership, and as we talk about, you know, hashtags and DMs, we have led the creator economy, but we haven't necessarily led the ownership economy, and that's a shift that I think we're all hyper aware of, we're sensitive of, and we want to drive change. I remember from my seat at Twitter watching Black Lives Matter explode and it become a global movement. Even things like Versus, right, where the whole world is talking about culture clashes by way of our culture. Those are global movements that we created, that we own, but we didn't quite see the benefit from it, you know? And that's across Meta, TikTok, all of it, right? So where I get excited about is when we start to think about what ownership looks like, and then to your point about unity, how we can pool our resources together to really drive long-lasting change.
Yeah.
Can I just build on that for a second? Because I do think, and TJ and I were just talking about it, I do think ownership is so important. But we also, many of us do sit within corporate environments, and there's the power of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
And the ability to be able to write the checks sometimes. And so for me, while, you know, for us specifically, we're not Black owned, but we are deeply in service to Black. And I feel that deeply, and so the ability to, I think we invested about $700 million last year with Black content creators.
Was that enough, in your view?
It was the largest that had been spent. Absolutely no. We can be doing more. But you get to write those checks, right? And I think that that is super important because we do know the power of media. And when we talk about perceptions, the stories that are told, not told, the images that are shown, not shown, that's the power of what you're talking about in terms of if I can see something now, I feel like it's possible, and that becomes a real thing. And I think there's really, the media has to do a better job. I will say that. We started a platform a year ago. Well, literally, probably now 4 years ago, COVID Brain, on the heels of the murder of George Floyd, and around content for change. And that was really us recognizing, even in service to Black, that we can do a better job in telling different, more varied stories about the Black lived experience. And so the team is doing a great job. We've got a lot of exciting things, but we need both. We need both of those, and that's the power of convening like this in terms of being able to kind of bring people in the room and make the deals.
But you've sat in various spaces. You know, you're at BET. You worked for Coke. You've been, as again I said, you're a trailblazer. Is it getting easier to make the business case? Is it easier to get the dollars, to get the stories told, to continue this push of Black culture?
It's ebbs and flows, and I think we're on the downturn right now, sadly, right? I had the honor of managing the Sprite business at Coca-Cola for many years, and we were champions of hip-hop and all those things. My portfolio was probably $3.4 billion portfolio that I managed, and every business cycle I had to present a case for action as to why Sprite needed to continue to support hip-hop. I would change the date. Honestly, I was like, I'm not making anything up new. I would change the date on the one page, my strong rationale. But at the end of the day, you know, it was really undeniable because Sprite was the only brand that was growing at the time. And I'm just putting up the dashboard with my results. And I'm like, what questions do you have? Because I just got to a point where I was not gonna have the conversation anymore. I'm like, we're delivering about 93% of the absolute revenue growth for the company. What more do we need to talk about? So, right, but there's ebbs and flows to it, and it is frustrating, but I was so committed to what we were trying to do. I know, by the way, at the time I had an all-Black Sprite brand team. All-Black Sprite brand team. Got my hand slapped a couple of times about that, but I promoted and we were winning. And so, but yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but I do think for all of us, regardless of the spaces and places we play and operate, you gotta know the business of the business. Yeah. And it can't just be about because we're cool and all those things, but it is, I mean, and the beauty is that the cases suggest that we need to be investing more with our audience, right, to answer your question about should we be doing more. So you got to know the business of the business, and I think just being kind of maniacal in that charge. With BET, we're all Black, so we just get to do Black stuff all day long.
I think that there's a really, really, really special gem in what you just said. I think, raise your hand if you work in corporate. I see my brother standing out there. And particularly working in corporate and you have the friend or the colleague or the industry person that you respect is like, yo, I got this thing. I just need like 25K. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all throw y'all logo in it. We'll get you hop and all that stuff. And the initial instinct is like, yeah, I'll help you. I think that this is actually can drive business objectives. But then you got to do the whole internal entrepreneur navigation, and you strike this balance of not trying to sell it too hard because it comes off as thirsty, but then articulating it to your white colleagues in a way that makes them understand that it's good for the business. So oftentimes, I just want to shout out to y'all folks in corporate that are doing that work. You're navigating, yes, this is a vibe, but you're also connecting it to the business objectives, which is the only way that shit's going to get sold through internally. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can speak to that as well, especially from the UK. Like, I'm a producer as well. There's only a few Black production companies in the UK. Ours is called Trifles Productions, and we got a show called Sorry I Didn't Know, which is about Black history. And it's on ITV, which was not known for supporting Black content, but in that moment, I used my position. I was a lead on one of their biggest comedy shows, and I was doing The Tower, their drama as well. So I went and spoke to the CEO during Black Lives Matter, and I was like, look, all these Black squares are cool, but respectfully, there needs to be more done. And we did this show as a pilot in 2016, and we were told it was niche, even though we were trying to sell it as a commercial thing that could be on at 8 p.m. and it's for everybody. Black history is everybody's history. So in that moment, I shared the episodes with him. He watched it, and luckily he picked it up, and we're in our 5th season.
Wow.
Right?
That's
You know, so
Congrats.
thank you. Thank you so much. But I used that journey that I had to navigate that space. I call myself an insider, outsider as an actor, producer. Like, I've got to go in that uncomfortable space, have that uncomfortable conversation with someone to say, look, do you really get what you guys are doing and that you need to do more? But we don't own the channel. It is on at 11 o'clock or 10:30 at night. We're doing 6 episodes instead of like 10 like the other shows, the white shows. But we have to take that win. And I think it's like a slow, like you say, like a slow burn. But I do think there's more that we all can do in our positions. And when we can start sort of connecting more in those spaces of impact, I think the things on the other side of that line can look different. Yeah. Because right now, as an actor, like, Insecure's gone. Bel Air's still on, but we're in our last season, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, this is a great show, seeing black people in a different light, black excellence, and we could probably run for 10 seasons, but we're in unprecedented times. But when I look at a lot of the black shows, I think the only one that's going to be on is probably Abbott Elementary, you know? And what does that say? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's going on there in terms of who's making the decisions, and what are the numbers on these shows as well? Because they are top shows with top audiences.
Absolutely.
You did say we're in unprecedented times, and so Vicky, with that said, here in the United States, there are growing armies of opposition to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the expectation is with the election of, or the inauguration rather, of President-elect Trump, that there'll be an entrenchment of that feeling, right, of trying to silence and marginalize our voices. What should the response of creatives be? I mean, Jimmy's talking about his work in the UK and how they're making strides. The fear here is that there's going to be a reversal. There's going to be a backsliding. So what should the response of the creative community be?
Go harder.
Yes.
It's tiring, and I'm tired, and I'm sure we all have felt that. But I will say, the day after the election, I was way low, and I was sick to my stomach. And by the end of that day, can I curse?
Absolutely.
I was like, fuck this shit.
Right.
Nobody is taking anything from me.
That's right.
That my ancestors built.
Yep.
I was oddly more fiercely American by the end of the day. And
I love that.
And I will continue with all the passion of my soul to break this monolith, to bring us together, to tell the stories, to tell the truth about this country, so that we can continue to progress. That's how I feel. We gotta fucking go harder.
TJ, how do you see it? What comes next?
Yeah, two things. One is just continuing to find new ways for us to be supportive of all the things that we're collectively doing. I think about a lot of the work that BET's done. I mean, I'm seeing Burna Boy on stage. I'm seeing Tyler on stage. A very intentional effort to pull forward the spirit of global black culture, the spirit of unification across all the tribalism and all the different sects that live within our community. I think that's imperative. And then two, understanding how we can identify opportunities for ownership. I can tell you on the sports side, the sports business is worth $500 billion, 1.2 trillion, somewhere in there, and you look at the front offices, there's nobody that looks like us. And more importantly, that information has been gatekept for a really, really long time. So what does it look like for each of us to own the responsibility of understanding the information and sharing it with each other and creating opportunities for another person to have a seat at the cap table and another person to have access to equity that may not have existed in the past?
Kim, final word to you.
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to, and I love the point about go harder, right? Because at the end of the day, it still is about economy and dollars and currency, and we all know that people will follow great content.
Yes.
If you give them something great, they will find it. They will, dig through the floor to get to it. And I think that's the power of what we do, because we know how amazing and crazy amazing our stories are. And so I would say let's just I have a great sense of confidence and optimism about the future. And I think it's exactly this conversation. I think, to me, the unlock is a global conversation, not only in terms of just how the power of our culture, and we know all the various verticals of that, but the business of it. The content that, that's going to be made from, Africa to Saudi. I mean, they're hungry for us. And I think we have to lean into that even more so. And it's, I think, for us. And I will say, I mean, I think BET does African American culture. I don't think we do Black culture consistently, but I'm super excited about what we're doing. The brand is very large in Africa. We've got a team in the UK. We've got a team in Paris. We're starting to use that content directly. And it's like, well, we need to edit this. No.
Yeah.
Just play the content as it is. And we're starting to really see some green shoots happening. So and we're going to lean in on that next year even more so. And so I think, hopefully this time next year I'll be able to say we're actually doing Black culture on a global scale. So excited about that.
Love that. We have time for a couple of questions from the audience. Any questions? Any questions for the panel? Any thoughts, observations?
Don't make us call out names. We know y'all.
You have a thought?
What's up, everyone? So my question is, I really hate introducing myself and stuff like that. I think it's just weird, right? All right, so my name is Elijah, all right, and my question is the idea of the artist, right, especially being a Black artist, right? We talked about Trump and all that stuff and yada, yada, whatever, but what is the responsibility that we have for our own community as artists, as Black artists, as global Black artists? What stories do we need to actually tell to impact the lives of, I guess, our global family, since we all share in the Pan-African experience? How do we get that together to bring about a sense of unity or Black consciousness on a global scale?
Whew, great question. You know what? I think it's about authenticity. I really do. And I think it's about us going harder and being much more intentional about being artists, but the stories we want to tell. And I don't just mean stories in terms of scripted stories. Right. Stories that I want to tell if I'm a musician, if I'm a politician. Like, we're all aware of our role globally, right? And it's about being really intentional about that. And I think it's also, there's something about building the team that is definitely inclusive around you as well. And then unapologetically holding on to that. It might take longer, but if we don't hold on to those things, then I think things get watered down, or there's a sense of compromise. And then we're seeing wins, but it's like, is that really our culture? And I think that's the challenge. Because if someone says, yeah, I'm going to bring you through, do this, but do it this way, but it's slightly off your center and not being authentic, then I think that can have damage in terms of what the goal is, right? And so, but I think it's a bright time. I'm so glad you said go harder, because it's so easy to be like, oh man, but I'm tired, but I'm inspired, and I love watching everything that BET is doing, and we just need to keep going, and if you look at all the talent globally out there now, it's ridiculous. It's on a serious level, but then again, it's like, what does that look like? I think back to your question is like, stop talking about the seat at the table. Let's just build our own tables.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Basically.
Let's build our own tables.
Can you make your point that you made about the conditioning of us and how we need to think differently? Because we were having a real conversation back there.
Well, probably since I knew I was Black, and you start to see, the honorifics that people get, the awards, and I think working in advertising and marketing, also seeing it, coming from Black media, you don't always have the money to, submit something to Cannes, so you're already out, right? And I think that you look at the Oscars, you look at the Grammys, you're like, of course I want to win those awards, of course I want a Cannes Lion, of course I do. But that's not me placing value on the Cannes Lion, that's the value that's been created
That's right.
Not
That's right.
by me,
That's
not
right.
to include me. And, we have to fight to get there. We had to fight to get a diversity can award. So it's about like telling the truth about what those accolades mean and giving them the proper value for us.
Spot on. Because I do think in order to answer that question, there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done. And where we seek recognition and value, BET Awards outperforms Grammys and the Oscars every year. Facts.
And
right?
yet not held in the same
No, absolutely
esteem.
not. And it's like, so when we attribute a certain value to things that don't necessarily, or give us, 20 minutes out of a 4-hour program, but we love it. And again, no shade on that at all. But I think there is some conditioning that has happened as we think about what it means to be recognized by our own. We are doing the NAACP Awards, mid-February? Like the beauty, I get chills even thinking about that environment, just sitting in that space, looking at us and the beauty of who we are and the grace and the excellence and all those things. It rivals the Oscars, full stop. But I do think that there's a real stuff. And so when we talk to the team, I said, no, we're gonna give you black glove service. And we're trying to turn that around because I know, there've been, whatever, for whatever reason. But for us, it's about when you come to us now, it is about black glove service. We don't want the burden. We want to show you the benefit of what it means when you partner with us because we love you and we're going to shoot you with the right lighting. We're going to get the best makeup artists. We're going to all the things. There's a shorthand that I don't think people talk about enough. And so I'm excited to see that really take hold. But it is a real conversation for all of us to think about.
One more question. Right here at the front.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Wright, and I'm from Miami. Question about ownership. I see like a lot of creatives, like for example, Beyonce is owning Sacred now. She's not going to investors or outside people to really funnel her money for her business ventures, or like Issa Rae starting her media company after her show with Insecure. Do you feel like more people are gonna go the route of partnership to still keep ownership versus, I guess, going to investors? I get like the money is important, but the ownership also leads to the power.
Right. You're in the VC equity space.
Kim and I were talking about this in the back a bit. I think we'll continue to see both. Over the past few years, you've seen this huge swing of capital. A few years ago, people just throwing money at stuff. You're starting to see a lot of media companies start to really, really feel the brunt of crazy valuations and being under-resourced and overstaffed. So I think you'll see both. One of the things that we talk about a lot is the difference between celebrity and actual influence. Just because you have 100 million followers doesn't mean you drive influence, doesn't mean you drive impact. So when you talk about raising capital and then furthermore building a sustainable platform, I think the key is like, is this person actually influential? Does this person possess the type of influence that can drive impact, or is this a celebrity? And oftentimes when you see that it's just a celebrity-backed platform, you start to see it dissipate a bit. So I think you'll look to see both. But Kim, you made this point in the back about it's one thing being black-owned, but we still have to prioritize being successful. You don't want to be black-owned and then struggle on the capital side as well. So striking that balance of being a really healthy business and having ownership and still ensuring that you have the access, the ability to scale the same way that you would if you were partnered within a larger organization. Yeah. It's nuanced, it's tricky.
Yeah, but it goes back to that conditioning, right? There's such a hurdle we place for black-owned brands. We want them to be, all of these things, and we don't have those same demands.
Yeah, the KPIs are completely
on other companies, and
yeah.
it is really unfortunate. And that goes to, I call it the black burden. It's like the black tax. It's like, what do you mean? Like, no.
Yeah.
have the same, we deal with that all the time, and I think that's the conditioning, right? And I'd rather be in a position where I can scale and I can support and invest in others, but I think we get really, really very, very laser focused on if it's Black owned.
Yeah, and I'll say from where I sit as CEO of OK Africa and Okayplayer, and as an entrepreneur, what I think is important is to have the right partners.
That's right.
Right. It's not about whether they're black or white. It's are they the right partners who will support me. I like to say not all money is good money. And
That's right.
so that's what I focus on when I'm looking for investment and looking to bring people to the table. Are they going to respect me? Are they going to support me? Do they get the vision? Are we aligned? And those are things that you have to be thinking about. Okay, unfortunately we're out of time, but I want to say thank you to our amazing panel. Please show them your appreciation. Listen, I think that all we need to say, all we need to say is go harder.
Go harder.
Go
yes,
harder.
Yes. So for those that can stay, we're excited. We are going to show a screening of a film that we did. Where's Adrian? Last year on the heels of the celebration of hip hop 50th anniversary. It's so great. Again, the benefit of being able to sit down with the greats to talk about hip hop, what it has meant to them in their lives, and just the ambition and all the level of expression. So if you can stay, we're going to show a quick screening of that, and then more cocktails or whatever you want.
More drinks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Please stay.